Abraham Lincoln, the president who saved a nation and redefined freedom. My name is Hiroshi Tanaka. I'm a 44-year-old political science professor from Kyoto, Japan. I've spent my career studying how democracies survive existential threats. And there's one case that haunts me, one leader whose decisions still echo through history. Abraham Lincoln. I first encountered his story during my doctoral research. I was skeptical. How could one man, with no military training, no executive experience, hold together a nation tearing itself apart? But the more I studied, the more I realized this wasn't about one man. This was about the power of an idea. March 4, 1861. Washington, D.C. Abraham Lincoln stands before a divided nation to take his oath of office. 7 southern states have already seceded. More will follow. His own security team fears assassination during the ceremony. Lincoln is 52 years old, tall, awkward, with a face one journalist called the homeliest in America. He was born in a one-room log cabin in Kentucky. His mother died when he was 9. His total formal schooling? Less than 12 months. He taught himself law by candlelight. European diplomats were placing bets. How long would this backwoods lawyer last? The Times of London gave the Union 6 months. French Emperor Napoleon III was already planning to exploit America's weakness, but they underestimated something crucial. Lincoln understood the human cost of leadership better than any trained politician. 6 weeks after his inauguration, Confederate forces fired on Fort Sumter. The Civil War had begun. What followed was the bloodiest conflict in American history. Brother fought brother. Families were destroyed. The numbers are staggering. Over 620,000 Americans died in 4 years. That's more than all American deaths in World War I, World War II, Korea, and Vietnam combined. For a nation of only 31 million people, 1 in every 50 Americans died. Lincoln carried this weight every day. He personally reviewed death sentences. He wrote condolence letters to grieving mothers. Photographs from 1861 show a vigorous man with dark hair. By 1865, he looks 20 years older, his face lined with exhaustion. But he never wavered. Keep the Union together. Make freedom real for all people. The turning point came in 1862. The war was going badly. Casualties were mounting. Public support was crumbling. European powers were considering recognizing the Confederacy. Lincoln made a calculated gamble. On January 1, 1863, he issued the Emancipation Proclamation. All enslaved people in Confederate territory were declared free. This wasn't just military strategy. It was a moral transformation of the war itself. The reaction was electric. Frederick Douglass called it a great step toward complete abolition. In Britain, working-class citizens held massive rallies supporting the Union. In France, Victor Hugo wrote, "Lincoln has finally given his war a sacred purpose." But not everyone celebrated. Northern Democrats accused Lincoln of overstepping authority. Even some generals questioned the timing. Lincoln stood firm. If the war was only about preserving the Union, it was just politics. But if it was about human freedom, it became a cause worth dying for. The war raged on. Gettysburg, Antietam, Shiloh, names forever seared into memory. Each battle brought more dead, more wounded, more families shattered. Then came November 19, 1863. A new military cemetery was being dedicated in Gettysburg, where 51,000 soldiers had been killed or wounded. Lincoln was invited to make a few appropriate remarks. After the main speaker's 2-hour oration, what happened next became one of the most important speeches in human history. Lincoln spoke for less than 3 minutes. Just 272 words. He didn't mention battle tactics or name generals. Instead, he redefined what America meant. 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty, and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Those words hit like thunder. Lincoln reached back to 1776, to the Declaration of Independence, not the Constitution of 1787 which had permitted slavery. He was resetting America's founding purpose. Equality wasn't just an ideal, it was the nation's reason for existing. Government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. A young soldier wrote to his sister, "I came here thinking I was fighting to save the Union. Now I know I'm fighting to save an idea." European newspapers ran the speech in full. In Germany, theorists called it a new definition of democracy. In Italy, revolutionaries distributed it as inspiration. But Lincoln's words didn't end the war. Fighting continued through 1864. That year, Lincoln faced re-election during wartime, something no president had done since Andrew Jackson. His opponents campaigned on immediate peace, even if it meant accepting slavery. Lincoln expected to lose. In August 1864, he wrote a private memo accepting defeat. He sealed it and asked his cabinet to sign the back. He was preparing for peaceful transfer of power during Civil War. Then something remarkable happened. General Sherman captured Atlanta. The tide shifted. Lincoln won re-election with 55% of the vote. Soldiers voted overwhelmingly for him, even though continuing meant they might die. A British correspondent wrote the Americans held a free election. While fighting for survival, they chose to continue the fight for freedom. By April 1865, it was over. General Robert E. Lee surrendered at Appomattox Courthouse. The Union was preserved. Slavery would be abolished. The United States would survive as one nation. Lincoln's plan for Reconstruction was generous. No mass executions, no seizure of land, with malice toward none, with charity for all, he said. He wanted to heal, not punish, but he would never see it completed. On April 14, 1865, just 5 days after Lee's surrender, Lincoln attended a play at Ford's Theater. Actor John Wilkes Booth entered the presidential box and shot Lincoln in the head. Lincoln died the next morning at 7:22 a.m. He was 56 years old. Secretary of War Edwin Stanton stood at his bedside. Now he belongs to the ages. The news spread across the world. In London, the House of Commons adjourned in mourning. In Paris, citizens laid flowers at the American embassy. Queen Victoria wrote, "No one can better appreciate than I can, who am myself utterly broken-hearted, what your sufferings must be." But perhaps the most powerful reaction came from the newly freed. Thousands lined the streets as Lincoln's funeral train passed through cities. An elderly woman in Philadelphia said, "He died for us. He gave us freedom, and it cost him everything." Lincoln's legacy is impossible to measure simply. He preserved the United States when it was on the brink of division. He ended slavery, freeing nearly 4 million people. He redefined American democracy as fundamentally about human equality. Under his leadership, the Union fielded over 2.1 million soldiers. The federal government grew from minimal presence to a powerful force. The Homestead Act opened western lands. The Pacific Railway Act connected the nation by rail. The Morrill Act created land-grant universities. But Lincoln's true achievement was philosophical. He proved democracy could survive its greatest test. He showed a government could be powerful enough to wage war, yet restrained enough to hold free elections during that war. He demonstrated that moral principle could guide politics, even when unpopular. Today, Lincoln's face appears on the penny and $5 bill. His memorial draws millions yearly. His words are quoted in freedom movements worldwide. From South Africa's anti-apartheid struggle to Czechoslovakia's Velvet Revolution, people fighting for democracy invoke Lincoln's vision. As a Japanese scholar, I've studied many leaders who claimed to save their nations. Emperors, shoguns, prime ministers, but Lincoln stands apart. He held no inherited power. He commanded no dynasty. He wore no uniform. His authority came from consent of the governed, even when they doubted him. Perhaps that's the most important lesson. True leadership doesn't require perfection. It requires conviction, courage, and unwavering commitment to a cause greater than oneself. Lincoln was melancholic, sometimes indecisive, often exhausted, but he never stopped believing freedom was worth fighting for. In my lectures, when students ask what makes democracy resilient, I tell them about a tall lawyer from Kentucky, who saved the nation by refusing to let it abandon its founding promise, who turned a political war into a moral crusade, who died before seeing his vision fulfilled, but whose ideas outlived every tyrant of his age. Abraham Lincoln proved that the arc of history, though long, truly does bend toward justice, but only if someone has the courage to bend it. Thank you for watching until the end. Please share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe and give us a like.